Hi there, this is the Kids Media Club podcast, and I'm Andy Williams. Now, it's a slight change to the normal format.
We collaborated.
We did a collab. Oh my God, that sounds so cool. We decided that we'd get together with our friends over at Brands in Play, which is a podcast co-hosted by Albane and Nick, who Nick, of course, has been on the podcast before, of Sawhorse. And we wanted to talk about what's happening in the world of UGC gaming, but also we couldn't really not talk about Italian brain rot. Because if you have any youngsters in your life, it's likely you would have heard them talking about Italian brain rot, even if you really didn't know what it meant. You didn't know what it meant, did you, Andy?
So it was an education for me because I didn't know enough about Italian brain rot.
It's clogging up your FYP, Joe, isn't it? I mean, this is like IP born from a meme. It's made up characters who are very absurd, bizarre, and surreal, doing typically Gen Z internet-y type stuff, taking it to the nth degree. Some of it's funny, some of it's weird, some will make you laugh, some will make you deeply uncomfortable. But this is meme IP, and this is a thing that's happening. We've seen it with Skibbity Toilet, and now Italian brain rot is here.
I mean, I think if Skibbity Toilet confused a lot of people, then goodness me, I can only imagine the confusion that Italian brain rot has brought to people. But interesting how it's a great example of what happened with Skibbity Toilet too, in the sense that, Andy, you used the phrase crowdsourced IP, and it's not. It's really, that's relatively close to the truth. Nobody really owns it. It's not trademarked or copyrighted. All it does is it gets put out there and it gets embraced by kids, Gen Z, creators alike, remixed, parodied, anything you can want to do with it. It's
free-for-all.
It is. It's a free-for-all. Now,
absolutely,
the words free-for-all scare a lot of people in media and in IP world. But goodness, it's fascinating to see what happens when the tools of creation are in young people's pockets and they're just given something that grasps a moment in time.
All right, everybody, we're excited for this week because we have our special crossover episode between Brands in Play and Kids Media Club podcast. I'm Nick Hill. I'm co-founder of Sawhorse and also the Chief Innovation Officer. And for those listening, you might not know everybody on this. So I'm going to throw to Joe to introduce herself, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Nick. Well, exciting. Look at us all hanging out together in our podcast. We're really happy to all hang out and discuss things today. So yes, I'm Joe Redfern, co-host of the Kids Media Club podcast. And within that, we cover everything in kids media, whether it's linear broadcasting, Netflix, Roblox, YouTube, you name it. If it pertains to media that kids consume, then we'll talk about it. And I've brought my two co-hosts along for this hangout. Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy, and I'm also a co-host of the Kids Media Club podcast. I guess I might look at it from a slightly more of a producer lens, but yeah, we cover the waterfront of kids media, and I'll throw over to Emily.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this like podcasting versus colliding? I mean, would Kevin Feige approve this? I don't know. Yeah, my name's Emily. I'm a co-host of the Kids Media Club podcast, and I come at Kids Media from a YouTube streaming and franchise lens. I'm always looking at how the picture builds there. So, yeah, I'm really excited to be chatting to you guys. Because Joe is our resident Roblox expert, and now her knowledge is going to be put to the test.
Oh, I hesitate to use the words expert when I've got these two people to my right on this screen, Nick and Albane, who both know Roblox infinitely more than I do.
Well, it's an amazing group today.
Yeah,
yes.
Super excited for this.
And Albane, why don't you tell the people about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Albane. I'm the Insights and Partnership Director at Geek and co-host of the Brands in Play podcast.
Amazing. So we're super lucky to have everyone here today. These are a lot of brilliant minds colliding to talk about IP and how it's kind of permeating through UGC gaming culture and kind of the future of what all that means. And I think we want to start talking about Italian brain rot, right?
I mean, well, goodness, Italian brain rot. As if we didn't have enough with Skibbity Toilet last year. meme-based IP that comes from UGC platforms. And anybody I spoke to at the back end of last year who was kind of under 18, Skibbity Toilet was the thing. It kind of blew off. I think a lot of people thought that it might be a one and done, something as crazy as that even spawns a Michael Bay movie adaptation. I mean, what? And then, hang on a minute, along comes Italian brain rot and says, "Hold my beer." So here we are. We've got a second wave of meme-based content that gets picked up by users and audiences on these UGC platforms and takes on a life of its own. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what brought us together and what we really wanted to dive into, because these things are so interesting, aren't they? It's, we come from worlds of where IP was very, it was crafted, it was shaped, it was molded and curated and quite tightly controlled. And here we've got these IP that are just growing organically across these platforms. So worthy of discussion.
So for the
So-
chiefs at the back, could somebody please describe Italian brain rot? Because
Yes,
those
please.
two words make sense, but together there's a different meaning that we're talking
Okay,
about
I'm
here.
going to look at Nick for this one.
So Italian brain rot is Gen AI. It's essentially an IP that came out from a kid, a 23-year-old creator from Eastern Europe, who just came up with these crazy ideas and mashed together these characters that were created from scratch, all inspired by Italian culture. I don't know. I think that there's fake Italian narrators and Italian names attached to these characters, but essentially, IP was created from scratch. It was all generated from these models, and then it was put online, and it blew up like crazy. Would that be a fair description?
I think so. And now here we got pop quiz. Who can name some of the Italian brain rot characters?
Cappuccino ballerina.
Cappuccino
Yes.
ballerina. Yes. Tralalero tralala, which is the shark wearing Nikes. Right, the other ones, let's have a think. You've got Tum
The
Tum Tum Tum
ballerina.
Sahoon. Saho, sorry.
The ballerina.
Yeah, that's Cappuccino ballerina. You got
Yep.
Bombadillo crocodilo, which is the crocodile.
Exactly.
I feel like Albane's got a list up on her screen now.
I mean, there's
Mhm.
the cappuccino one as well. I can't remember, cappuccino ballerina, I think. There's so many, I think, and it's sorry, my connection went a little bit bad, but I think, I don't know if Nick mentioned, but what's really interesting is that this is all fuel from a need essentially for this new generation to have an IP that is not really understood, and it has to be absorbed and fueled by this absurd, so that it's not really understood by the mass, and it has to be doesn't have to make sense. And I think that's what's really hard sometimes to understand from those brain rots, is the fact that there's not really a point to it, is there?
Yeah, is part of the point of it that a lot of people perceive it as trash. That's part of the fun and the humor of it, is if you're celebrating something that is kind of people look down on. I mean, it's almost like really leaning into the concept of people talking about AI slop. It's just like, well, hold my beer. Here's some AI slop for you.
Exactly.
It's like as
exactly.
sloppy as possible.
And it's
And
also,
it's
it's
just,
just, I mean, the thing is, right, that internet culture hasn't really changed. It just has eras. And that idea of massively absurd, surreal, funny for the sake of funny, content has been around for years and years and years. I mean, back in the day, it would have been salad fingers, and then it would have been influencers, and now it's this. Like it's the internet still internets, I guess.
and
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a generational thing, right? Isn't it? When rock music came along, a whole generation spoke to their kids and were like, "What's this trash that you're listening to?" Skibbity Toilet again last year. I always, think that if a kid's looking at it, and if a parent looks over their shoulder and says, "What the heck is that rubbish?" you can more or less guarantee it's going to be appealing to that generation, because it's part of development, isn't it? When you're asserting your own identity, you like something that is different from previous generations. And I think that's what Brain Rot and Skibbity Toilet both did with their absurdity.
Well, let's talk about they're both crazy bizarre, but let's talk about like the origin for the Skibbity Toilet. Where did that actually come from? Do you guys know? Like, who was the creator?
I do not know the origin story of Skibbity Toilet, Nick. Do you?
I don't.
I
I
don't either.
definitely don't. But
I know I want to
so who
find out
owns
that.
the
I want to know
rights?
the origin story.
My question is, who owns the rights to Skibidi Toilet?
Well, it was the creation of someone, and I forget his name, but actually, he had created quite a lot of lore and canon around
Hmm.
it. It did have roots in something, whereas I think Italian brain rot perhaps had roots in whatever I'm going to generate on this AI eraser. Which is why I do actually think that Skibidi Toilet, because it's being adapted by Michael Bay, it's delving into that canon that did actually exist before. I don't imagine such canon exists for Italian brain rot. But what's interesting is looking at the phenomenon of both of those and talking about the creators is how, even though Skibidi Toilet had a creator, and so did Italian brain rot, what happens is really the creator allows the audience then to become actors in further creation of that as an IP. So very quickly you had Cappuccina Ballerina, and then you had stories being spun up that she then married Tung 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 Sahur, and they had babies, and all of these stories spiderweb
Started,
out
yeah.
from this inception. So it's kind of IP creation by virality, which is something that I think is very different. You don't necessarily like virality if you own an IP because it means you can't control it. Not in the old kind of
Yep.
Disney way where we used to have style guides and brand books, and so that feels very, very different. But we come back to this world that we're in now, where we're in social gaming, social video, UGC platforms. The audience are invited in, so we can't really be surprised when they take these ideas and run with them.
Also, what's really unique here is that this is all based in Gen AI. So, like,
Yep.
basically, people are taking the concept and then they can quickly generate new stories, new images, new video clips using AI, and they can post that immediately. So, I think that's another reason why it's gone so viral.
Yeah. And I think what's really funny is that now, but you do have a sense of community behind this because you do have now wiki fans, fandom pages that are talking about what Joe was mentioning, the whole stories around the character. And I think what's really interesting is that we're now seeing, well, before you had a bit more of a top to bottom approach to like IP licensing. Now you're really seeing new IPs that are completely made from the bottom up by different community members, and that's why it's so hard to know. There's not one creator. I was trying to, like, for this podcast, to find if we could pin down a specific creator that started this, but there's someone that created the initial image, and then someone created the sound, and then someone remixed it. So it's just a snowball of different interpretation, and I think that's what's really hard in a way, to be able to pinpoint who owns it, because it's just alteration after alterations.
Yeah, it looks like it's the ultimate open source IP. I mean, would it be fair to say that you're almost talking about somebody creating a sandbox and then inviting everyone to come in and play, rather than you know creating something that you're asking everyone to passively sit back and watch?
Yeah, I fully agree with that analogy. I think you're spot on that. Yeah.
And as far as like copywriting the IP, that's not really happening here, right? Like it's impossible because it was created from the Gen AI, and so it's no one really owns the rights, right? Like no one
Yep.
can sue you for using it or spinning it off.
Or making money from it, I suppose, is always the key thing when it comes to copyright.
Exactly.
You can play and you can have your fan moment, but once you start making money, then the lawyers tend to come sniffing out.
And but to that money point, you guys can tell us one of the big standards that I use these days on the virality of something or how much the audience takes it and run with it is to look at Roblox, because you can spin up, much like you could post a TikTok remixing some of your favorite content. Roblox is a really good temperature check on what is popping and what is becoming viral. We've seen it with Squid Game, 400 Squid Game fan made experiences. Where I've been tracking K-pop Demon Hunters this last few weeks to see how many are popping up around that. You look at Italian brain rot, and again, there's pages and pages of fan made experiences. Not all of them are even active, but it doesn't matter. The fact that someone has spun one up is enough of a barometer to know that it starts to mean something. What have you seen in terms of how Italian brain rot has showed up on Roblox?
now I was just looking at Geek because obviously on our platform we track all of these experiences that you have on Fortnite and on Roblox. So it was really interesting. We've I think we've all heard of Grow Garden recently. That's completely like shoot up the number of visits and attention that Roblox users are addressing to on the platform. And as a second now, which also took over Brookhaven, which used to be the largest game, is now a brain rot experience that's called Still a Brain Rot. And out of this month, they had 1.8 billion visits. So it's really
Wow.
interesting. Yeah, it's really big, really large. And I've done the same like analysis on Epic Games and on Fortnite. And if you remove all of your like the IPs that Epic owns, so everything that's done by Lego or everything that's done by Epic Game themselves, again, it's a one versus one, which is quite normal. This is kind of what people want to do on Fortnite. But the second one is another brain rock. And when we speak about IP, the name is called still the brain rot this time, not a brain rot. But it's the same principle. So I think creators are also looking at each other's platform a bit like what you're doing on Instagram and TikTok and seeing, okay, what works on this platform? Maybe I'll try on that one and see if that works as well. And it's on Fortnite. I was checking the data. It was 21 minutes average session time. So it's a huge amount of volume of time that people
Yeah.
are spending with this IP that no one owns.
And I'm interested, what separates the successful Italian brain rot games from the ones that don't do so well? What is it that's kind of that's attracting people to play on the game?
It's
It's
It's the game design. It's the core
right,
loop on, like, how that game is, like, put together. Because a lot of to everyone's point, it's like there's been so many of these little game experiences that are leveraging Italian brain rot and popping up on all these platforms, but it will be those games that have the funnest, most stickiest core
right.
loop that will rise to the top.
Yeah.
And to that point, so you have a big one on Roblox that has a ton of concurrent users. You got a big one on Fortnite. The owners of those 2 games are monetizing, and
That's right.
they're the winners in this right now.
Right.
That's
And
right.
and
Interesting.
so that's interesting because that implies that just putting Italian brain rot as a wrapper around something isn't gonna work. As
Yeah.
viral as it is, it's still got to be good stuff, which is forever it shall be, right? You know, if you're going to create a good story, it still has to be a good story, whether you're telling it about Cappuccino Ballerina or SpongeBob.
And the
It's still
definition of good can kind of change because, good, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not, I don't
Good.
think any of it's life changing. Stop me if I'm wrong.
No, it's it's still I think just to add to that, I think what makes it fun, it's yes the gameplay, but it's just that other people are there. And I think that's what Grow a Garden was so successful is it wasn't the prettiest designed game, but it was just because there were so many people that were there. And I think it's what drives those users is being part of like a cultural moment. And it's so fun to think that you are there with millions of other people within different servers experiencing the same game. And I think that's what makes a meme viral is that everyone's finding it funny at the same time. And we
And
just
that's
have those like
and that's
that.
the thing new. That's the thing
No,
new. We had
exactly.
Harlem Shake. We had Harlem Shake. We had like
We
for
just had
some reason
2D memes. We had 2D memes. They have 3D virtual environments, and I think is that virality is we need to look at Roblox experiences no longer as game but more as content. And you just have those really snackable moments that people want to share, and it just have you seen this? That's so funny, and they're all sharing with their friends, and they're all hanging out in the spaces, and I think I think it's a really interesting moment to look at how people are consuming content on those platforms.
And is a lot of the power of something like Italian brain rot being part of the tribe that understands the in joke,
Yes.
that there's that shared cultural currency, and that's what you're enjoying a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. Culture currencies is that's such a right term. Is that it's like sharing that inside joke. So I think there's this. I have my opinion on why it went so viral is because it was so absurd that not everyone could get it. But those is that
Yep.
saying of like the people that get it, and those that don't. And I think it's just if you're part of
Yeah.
the club, then it's incredibly fun, and it's just fuel within those platforms that are very Gen A, Gen Z focused.
Yeah.
yeah. So when it comes to IP, because we've all spent most of our careers, particularly the co-hosts of the Kids Media Club, in building and creating IP. Andy as a producer, Emily at Disney. We've but the way that IP used to be created is markedly different from what we've just spoken about. This collaborative, organic co-creation, and also the fact that actually this the I guess it's the genre, because what you just said is, you can have Italian brain rot, obby, stealer brain rot. You can have different genres still wrapped in Italian brain rot, but the gameplay loop, which is the equivalent to the story we were talking about, still has to be good. You can't just throw it on there, the equivalent of old label slapping in the old days, and think that it's going to work. So we talked about SpongeBob earlier. What does that teach the more traditional IP who are going on to Roblox about how they show up there in this world where if you don't hit that tone right, you're dead in the water.
I think one challenge is the business model. Like the old school business model with IP, we know it works. You have the idea from scratch, you copyright it, you can make one piece of media about it, and then you can kind of translate that into all these other forms. And there's enough money to be made there to support that system and those creators. I think it's hard on UGC gaming platforms because it's like feast or famine. In order to like actually turn a profit and make some money, you have to have a top game, and you're competing with the best developers on the platform. And yeah, there's just a smaller percentage that are actually doing that well. So I think so if you think about traditional, media and creators, it's kind of scary to get into that world and compete on that level. It's a totally different playing field.
It's not like it isn't the same as, say, starting a YouTube channel, right? I feel like there's plenty of, you know, successful enough YouTube channels out there that are able to sustain themselves. Let's not go down the rabbit hole about kids monetization on within the confines of this conversation, but there's a number of YouTube channels. So like brands back in the day would be like, okay, yeah, maybe we'll jump, we'll make the leap. We'll set up a brand YouTube channel or a character to have a YouTube channel. Whereas on Roblox, it's far more competitive to get something that's monetizable.
Yeah, totally. And then also it's I think I would say the YouTube is a more natural transition for traditional creators that are
Yes.
making TV and film because they're like, "Oh, now it's just a web series. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
smaller budget, it's a different format. We get it." I think it's a bigger jump to say, "No, it's actually a game that's persistent." So I have to
Yeah.
understand game design, I have to understand the community there, and I have to continue to feed this thing every week. So I think a lot of IP creators in the traditional realm are like, it's just that sort of that amount of work that goes into that is kind of foreign and new to them.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things that's a challenge, I think, for traditional creators when they moved to YouTube was the idea of how much content they were supposed to churn out.
Yeah.
That was a very different mindset from the mindset that they had for traditional media. Does that apply to in the game world as well, where there are a lot of people coming from a gaming point of view that when faced with the amount of content that they needed to produce for Roblox were a bit like their head exploded.
Yeah, I think gaming in general, this whole concept of live ops is just a lot. Like the biggest, most successful games out there are constantly, creating new stuff every single week.
Mm.
So it's a
It is,
cadence and it's a clip that
yeah.
is pretty intense.
It really is like launching a new media channel for brands. I think if they expect to be able to launch one experience and then that's it and not dated and for this to be like a viable environment, it's just not, I think, how these platforms are working and also how not the audience is. Like we have to remember this is still the same audience that, loves TikTok and loves the social media. So they just want to see more and more and more content constantly. And I think there's a lot of brands that just realize how much content they have to create and might go more for the partnership route where they do integrations with existing partners because that's a bit of a lower lift. But I think the commitment is the same. You're not going to do just one Instagram post. You're going to have a whole calendar plan. And I think the approach should be the same on Roblox. If you're going to launch your own environment, you need to have, okay, what are we going to do for this, this cultural moment? Because obviously on Instagram, you have, I don't know what brands are following now. It's like Earth Day and Valentine's and etc. You have like cultural days, and on Roblox you have similar ones associated whether with the brand calendar. So there's a lot that I think you have to consider when you're launching something on Roblox as your own experience.
And in terms of that let's dive into some examples, because I know SpongeBob has over the last couple of years actually has evolved in very much that way. Started off with just doing kind of integrations, then branded experience, now has multiple branded experiences and teams that are updating them. Do you tell us a little bit about how that's the best practice now? What's the playbook now? If you are a more traditional IP that has come from that legacy background, what do you need to think about?
Well, I would say a couple things about traditional IPs. If it's an IP that the audience resonates with, like it's a cartoon, or an IP that's kind of coveted amongst younger players, you have a chance of being successful. You can't take any brand and just put it on Roblox and have it go viral. You can do great interaction, like activations that get ton of engagement, but you won't have that engagement persistently over time, and you won't be able to like have massive numbers that allow you to monetize. So you have to find those IPs. SpongeBob is a great example of that type of IP that can be successful. So is Sonic the Hedgehog. Those two titles, the Tower Defense and Sonic Speed Simulator, are two of the top branded experiences that are actually monetizing. They are persistent and they are seeing a lot of success.
The SpongeBob thing is super interesting because SpongeBob has recently been popping on my signals for streaming performance. So SpongeBob is like bringing home the viewership bacon for Paramount Plus in quite a consistent way since the start of the year. It popped up on the US Nielsen half year ranking. It's in the top 10 ranking for 15 weeks in a row, rubbing shoulders with Bluey. It's not at the Bluey level, but it's amazing that, such an old IP, which when I say it hasn't been dormant, but I haven't seen it on signals from a streaming point of view for a while, in a major way, and that I don't know, the relevance of it feels like it's clarifying a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work in Nickelodeon in the UK, and that was about, good 10 years ago, and it was an old IP then,
Oh,
and
jeekers.
so I'm amazed at the longevity of SpongeBob. Part of me thinks that part of the longevity of SpongeBob is it's a character that sort of lends itself to almost that UGC element. The way we were talking about Italian brain rot and the fact that everyone felt that they could kind of do their own version of Italian brain rot. SpongeBob kind of has an element of that. It's a character that you kind of have a lot of fun doing your own drawings of. It's kind of got that slightly left field, off kilter sense of humor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's an
I've got
interesting IP.
I've got a question for you, Andy, with that in mind, because I think there's two ways now that traditional IP are going on those virtual platforms. So they either go, like what Netflix has done, where they select specific IP, and it's more about getting creators to then make their own source with it, and but
Yeah.
they give them the license. And then you have like the SpongeBob that are still like in this mindset of having to control the environment. So they're not really creating this like creative freedom, I guess, for creators to be able to utilize the IP as they wish. Like, what do you think is the mindset that has like is one better than the other, or like when would one make more sense than the other? Like, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, there's obviously a strong reason why big brands want to control the IP, and because that's the source of the monetization. But I'd been interested in how you following companies like Netflix that take almost a view that they're quite tolerant of people doing their own versions of a Netflix show. So, famously, Bridgerton, there was a Bridgerton musical that somebody created. It became a massive hit in the Edinburgh Fringe. It did really well, and Netflix were aware of it and were super tolerant about it existing. And then it got to a point where they were going to then transfer to the West End and have a proper big budget production with people investing in it. And at that point, Netflix then said, "You can't." Yeah. And so I think there's maybe a sweet spot where you can allow, people to do their own versions, play in that sandbox with your IP, but then if it gets to a level that kind of it reaches that plimsoll mark that you at that point, you kinda say, "Okay, stop."
The example on Roblox I can think of is Squid Game, obviously, because Squid Game proliferated on Roblox with fan made experiences. But from what I can tell, no takedown notices delivered by Netflix because actually they knew it was helping drive viewership. I mean, has that happened very much on Roblox in your experience that an IP owner is clamped down, or are they pretty hands off?
Yeah, just in my experience, I would say it's like 50-50. You know, some brands and some IP holders look at the platform and just say, "That's my IP. Just take." There's 30 experiences, 100 experiences that are leveraging the IP. Just take it all down because we're coming there officially, and we want to show up in the way that we can control. But and then the other camp is really thinking about like, oh wow, this is free advertising. This is free impressions and exposure for my brand. As long as none of these games are like making a ton of money, like let's just let them do their thing. And I agree with the latter. I mean, I think that is best practices for approaching UGC gaming platforms.
Yeah. It reminds me of when I worked at Disney, there was another producer went down to a nursery, and they said they were very excited, and they said, "We've painted all of these Disney characters along the wall." And he said, "I hope you've got approval and sign off from Disney." And I was thinking, you don't want to be that guy. Do you mean?
I was gonna say
That
for a
job sucks.
nursery.
Emily will tell you that you've got streamers like Netflix now that very much look at places like YouTube for IP. Creators who have gone, they've made the mistakes, they've built their community, they've iterated their product to a point where they've reached critical mass, and then Netflix will come along and go, "Hey, how about coming over to our platform?" Do we think that there's opportunities for people like Netflix to scout Roblox? Is it a mine of IP that somehow they're missing out on?
Yes.
Yes, go for it, Emily.
Bilaterally, yes. Listen, I think everyone is in the business of audience rental right now.
Yes.
Building audience is so much harder than renting audience. And, creators are doing it, creators on Roblox are doing it, they are doing the hard graft. And so any of the big platforms should be well-minded to go in and find ways of renting that audience. I mean, I think the really interesting part of this is like finding great gaming IP on Roblox that has the features that makes it translatable into video content. That is, and not all Roblox IP would be that, in my opinion. So finding something that has the level of storytelling, characterization, that kind of thing to come and be a video traditional video format show, I think is really interesting. But I think Roblox is a massive gold mine, untapped gold mine of IP that would have that applicability on Netflix or on TikTok or
Right.
wherever else, right? Like
Um,
not even just in traditional format retelling. I think there's loads of places it could go.
I was just gonna say, this is a really interesting thing, right? You've got games like How to Grow a Garden that are so massive, and I would argue have very little to almost no story, especially from a first time user experience. When you go in, like you're just told to start planting seeds. There's no backstory. There's no characters, right? So that's going to be a challenge to adapt into like a big story, and unpack it. Um, so I think that's a big challenge for this space. But obviously the audience is there. There's demand there. So I think that I would like to see more game designers and creators, in addition just focusing on that core loop, really just thinking about story. You
Yeah.
know.
I think this oh sorry, I was gonna say the argument could be also made with Minecraft where there's not really a story, and I think it was probably a challenge for them, and I think it was like if you look at the movie, because there's not really a storyline, they had to invent everything around it. And I think that's the challenge with those UGC games as well, is that not all of them have like depth to it. It's more like the velocity at which people are creating content around those IP, and this is why like Squid Game did so well. This is why like Brain Rots are doing so well as well. It's more like the fandom that you have around those IP that I think is de-riskifying maybe for a platform like Netflix. There's already know that there's an audience to capture there, as opposed to betting on a script or a new IP that hasn't really been tested.
I think there'll be a new competency in terms of creators, maybe creators that are embedded in somewhere like Netflix, in that they will be swimming around in Roblox. They will be picking up on the fact that Grow a Garden is huge, not necessarily to try and translate it into stories, but just feeling what is working with the audience and then constructing stories around it. Just reading the signals, I think, is something that you can really take a read on from somewhere like Roblox.
Yeah, and it's also an interesting, it flips on its head the received wisdom of if you come in at this from more of a traditional media background, you're constantly reminded that does this IP have the ability to work in games and to work in other mediums? But it's interesting to almost flip that on its head and think if somebody was creating an IP from a gaming platform, for them to think beyond that and think, has it got the story potential and the characters to lend itself to more of a traditional series?
Yeah.
So one of the things that really interests me with IP like, and I'm not sure whether IP is the right label for Italian brain rot, but with something like Italian brain rot, is does it have legs beyond being this in joke? Or is it going to be like, I don't know, the Crazy Frog, the one hit wonder that kind of then noped out?
But it keeps going back, Crazy Frog.
It
Does it?
Yes, that was a bad analogy.
I think that the key thing that's changing with meme and developing, I would say, with meme culture is the accessibility to the tech that goes alongside it. So, like I said, back in the day, you had Harlem Shake, right? And we all did the Harlem Shake, and then like corporate offices started taking it up, and it got very cringe. But like that is indicative of the type of tech that we all had access to at the time. You had your camera on your phone, you could record something, put it on YouTube. But now that like generative AI is there, things like TikTok, CapCut, right? All of the the movie studio we have in all of our pockets is so accessible to everybody. I think that has the potential to take meme life to the next level, and it's probably the reason something like Skibbity Toilet. Skibbity Toilet came on my radar on my way back from Mick Jr. in 2023. I don't know why. I don't know what TikTok was thinking I needed it in my life, because I remember showing it to my young son and him just like thinking it was the most hysterical thing ever. So like Skibbity Toilet's been around for a while, and that's because access to tech that supports the iterafication of it is there and available. So whereas before things would be one and done because there was there just wasn't the access to drag it out like the internet likes to do.
And it shows what you were just saying, is that actually the life cycle of an IP is now contracting, because there are a few IP that have been around 20 years. We've got Peppa Pig, we've got SpongeBob, we've got Bluey that is enduring as a more modern example of that. But actually, you could argue because of that technology that Emily was talking about, an IP matures very quickly now, basically, doesn't it? Skibbity Toilet, arguably, already were the other side of it. You talk to a 15-year-old about Skibbity Toilet, and they'll probably roll their eyes and go, "Oh God, that's so done."
So
Um,
old.
it's so old. So really, does that mean that, like Andy said, can we class it as an IP, or are we saying that the definition of an IP needs to change? And can anybody should Netflix even bother trying to create a series around Italian brain rot, or are things that we just let become their own IP and then die off very quickly?
I like that idea of open source IP. I thought that was a good line, Andy. You might have to steal that one.
Thanks. Yeah, go for it.
I mean, is it IP or is it just a meme? I feel like
What do you mean just
Skibbity
a
Toilet.
meme? Memes are awesome. Give me
Well, no, I mean,
the respect they
hey,
deserve.
no disrespect to the meme. I'm just saying, like, is it something that you can expand and build and, make sequels of and, like, go deep into lore? And I think that Skibbity Toilet is not. I think it, it's something that has, like, made shockwaves around the entire world. My 6-year-old son, who doesn't even know what it is, has come home because he's heard kids say it at school. So he's saying Skibbity around the house. I'm like, do you know what that is? He can't even describe to me what the image is. So there's that. you know?
That was my
And
fault, Nick,
so,
because I said to my 6-year-old, I showed my 6-year-old a video, and then he went into his childcare, and that just, reverberated across the Atlantic, and so I
You're
started
spreading
that.
it.
That was me. Sorry.
yeah.
And I think going back to Italian brain rot, like personally, like I think it's a fad. I don't think it's gonna be anything significant. I think it's made its shockwaves. I think people are gonna continue to make fun stories, and I think it'll be fun and stuff. I just don't see a world where that
We're
becomes
gonna revisit
a
this in a
part of our
decade when
culture.
the Oscar goes to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Tum
Italian
tum
brain
tum
rot.
ça roule.
But that's it. I
Yes,
would see the movie.
Michael Bay goes up and collects his Oscar.
I would see the movie if it came out. 100%.
Yeah.
I was saying, let's just close it off with some quick rapid fire questions. We can get a response from everybody. The first one being, how do you know if you're sitting on the next $1 billion IP? You know, whether that's in UGC or social, or what type of indicator do you think is hot and kind of something that could work?
Oh,
Joe, what do you say?
Wow. There isn't one indicator, but again, fan-made games, pages and pages of experiences on Roblox, YouTube channels, TikTok. I think that's a good indicator. But I also buy the argument that sometimes some things just should be allowed to be and a meme. And
Just
maybe
be.
we try too hard to make things into IP. But that's certainly one of the signals that I look for when I'm trying to track things.
I don't have. It's not hot. It's really boring, and it's just slow, consistent growth. So
Wow.
there is no, the slow, consistent growth is the best indicator, and I think that it's not one to be ignored.
Mm.
I think for me, it would be similar to what Joe just said, is that it's paying attention to the fans, really. And if they really love it, and even if it's just a small group of fans, if there's a real passion there, there's a good chance that that will ignite and grow and spread. I always remember I listened to an interview, I think it was with an investor, and he was asked to explain his investment strategy, and he was saying that basically you had to be where the puck was heading, not where it was at the moment. And I think fans are the best indicator of that.
Mm. Great
Cool.
point.
On
Yeah.
rapid fire, then, what one mistake do brands and media companies keep making in UGC? Nick and Albane, I love this for Roblox. You don't have to name and shame.
No, I won't shame anybody, but I think one thing is, like, a lot of brands look at it and go, "Wow, Roblox, 100 million daily active users. How do I make all my money there?" You
Mm.
know? And I think
Yeah.
that is just not it's not the goal. The main goal is to, reach culture and make massive impact and make people aware of your IP and your businesses. So I think that's a big mistake they make.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think it's the concept that this is still very early day for bottom funnel traction, and for now, this is still a brand marketing channel to be able to engage with an audience that's notoriously really hard to reach. And then probably, I think the one thing that they get wrong is the fact that they can take creatives or content that they've done already on social media and just reapply it. So like, let's recreate our video campaign, but in a 3D format. Or even worse, if you were to recreate your store, because everyone loves to have a digital store and go shopping virtually in a retail shop. I already hate to go to a physical shop. I don't know why people will go for a digital one. So I think it's the codes have changed. So it's the same as when you made the jump from TV to social. You have that change that has to happen for marketers now, from social to virtual worlds, where they need to understand what type of content people are consuming on this platform, and they're a little bit different, as we've seen now, like today when we're talking about skibidi toilets, etc. It's another culture that you have to adapt slightly so that you recreate a content that's going to be consumed and liked by the audience.
Nice. Well, we have time for one last question for everybody. I want to get a quick response of, like, what do we want to see happen in this space by the end of the year? I'll go first. Yeah, by the end of the year. So, like, a little less than half the year. I want to see an actual IP that started from Roblox come out in traditional media, and I want to react to it. I know I've heard rumors that, like, the one of the big games, Adopt Me, is in production on something. I would love to see it, or some other one. I've yet to see it.
Agree. My bet to that is that a new sports format will be born on Roblox and then will start being played as a league in real life. But that's my bet to that. I'm going to have one. I'm going to say
Ooh.
my kind of play. I really would love creators, native creators on Roblox and video creators and traditional media come closer together because there's a lot that each can learn from the other. Creators want to learn the art of storytelling. There's a huge number of people in traditional media that would love to pass that on, but vice versa. There's a huge number of people in traditional media that need to learn about community, about evolving stories, that always on that we spoke about. So I'd like to see the two sides come together and collaborate more. Over to you, Emily.
I'm with Nick. I was that was my one, Nick. I'm very excited to see Roblox IP make the jump to traditional media, and yeah, I can tell that Adopt Me has been gossiped about in the halls of kids media for a few years. So come on,
Ah.
let's see,
Probably won't
let me
see it
track
by the
it.
end
I
of the
want to
year.
track the numbers. Let's do this.
Andy?
Yeah, mine was similar to yours, Joe. Is to see kind of all those two worlds kind of merge a bit more, and for everyone to realize that really they're in the storytelling business, and it's not. There are a lot of shared skill sets.
Amazing. Albane, you
Amazing.
get to sign it off. The final word, make it good, no
Oh,
pressure.
I feel like I can't say that. I fully agree with you. I think my next part is probably how do you get people like more that bottom funnel conversion. I think it's more like how do you get people also to connect, like that transmedia connection. So how do you get people from playing your game here, playing your experience on Roblox, to maybe signing up to Nickelodeon or any other like streaming platform, or potentially going to the cinema. I don't know if they still go, but I think it's that crossover activity to be able to link them. I think that would be quite interesting. I would love to see a bit more of that.
Transmedia for the win. We love that
Exactly.
word at the Kid podcast.
We'll take more of that. Well, that was awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Big shout out to Kids Media Club and Brands in Play. Finally, we made this happen. Thank you, guys.
Well,
Thank you.
hang out again.
fantastic.
We're going to do
Okay.
a review of the Adopt Me series.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
a review of the Skibby toilet film. Well, one of these.
yeah. Well, we'll see you in the cinema.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Later.
Bye.